All right, I think we're live. Is it started yet? There it goes. A little water, get my radio voice going. Okay. Yeah, and I kind of picked a topic I'm going to cover real quick. I had time to do another one of these today. It's not going to last real long. Please remember to give me stars, by the way, those of you who use stars, it's appreciated. All right, so I'm going to hop over for a moment and talk to you guys a little bit about the fact that most people train too much. So you really should be trying to maximize those things. And most people get in and they train way too much. And I've had clients who came to me, they're like, well, I started, with one of your free programs. I had one recently came to me. And I went over and pulled one from this YouTuber who took one of your programs and expanded it way into a lot more volume. And then I just spun my wheels. And I'm like, well, of course. And I cut this guy way back. And then all of a sudden he's making gains again. And what I mean, okay, it's going to be very specific to where you are. Some of my lifters, I'll have them do the same lift on both, but others I may not. I might have a lot of my people do normal pause benching with a flat bench after their max effort work, and then do dumbbells for a dynamic day. What I don't like to do is see people do something too close to the dynamic movement on dynamic effort day. Now, we just lost everyone who doesn't know advanced programming, by the way. They just said, I have no idea what in the hell he's talking about. We're discussing conjugate periodization here, or the West Side method. That's the slang term for it, West Side barbell. Devised this whole system. It's now used in elite sports. It's used to train special forces, MMA fighters, top-level power lifters, all these things. But he's talking about the conjugate method, which is something I prescribe for about 70% of my athletes use that. So that's a very specific question. But here's what I'm gonna say with that. It's gonna be bigger, heavier movements on max effort day. But again, back over to that point about total volume. Most people simply train too much. And even for me, and I don't always like to use myself as an example because, again, I'm a very serious competitive lifter. I'm also masters because I'm age 46. I am moderately chemically enhanced. I don't claim to be natural. So I don't always like to use myself as the example, but for me, realistically, I do about 12 sets for everything but my weak links. Right, everything but my weak links. Obviously, things like triceps and things like that get a little bit more hamstrings. But that's my actual approach for the most part. But you guys see my training. I'm also over here doing rep work with 315 on the bench press. I'm repping out 550 pounds on a deadlift on camera. Can't handle very much volume. At those sort of workloads, I'll start tearing my body apart at a certain point. And I can't afford that. I'm 46. I can't afford injury, even that 5 or 6 year difference. But that's also one reason I get so many masters, people who hire me as their coach. So like, yeah, you're deadlifting 600 plus pounds and you're not hurt. Kind of matters. Yeah, no aches or pains. That's a good thing. I mean, we really shouldn't be hurting. That's kind of its own topic too. Everyone's like, oh, I want to burn. I want to be sore the next day. I'm like, why? The fuck is wrong with you? I don't want that. I want to deadlift 700 pounds. I don't want to hurt. What are you guys talking about? You want to burn? You want to hurt? I mean, I don't know. You could take an ice pick to a muscle. That will make it hurt. I personally would rather just get bigger and stronger, right? I want to be more jacked, and I want elite lifts at the world level. That's what I want. To me, that's way more important than being sore. But I mean, I always tell people, if that's what gets you off, if that's your fetish, I mean, you could hire someone to do that, like if that's your kink, but you don't need to do it in the weight room. Yeah, because they think sore equals results, and the reality is that's not true. I very, very rarely get sore from training. And again, you guys, what did you just watch me do this week on camera? I pulled 550 for a 5 rep set, and it wasn't even hard. 550 pounds. I did it for 5 reps. I benched 315 for 5 pause reps this week. I don't get sore from doing that. You shouldn't get sore. Sore is what happens when you're new to training, right? It's what happens when you make a major change. You get a I feel like I get sore if I lift heavy and go lay down. I don't actually, Megan, I don't do any of that stuff. I don't stretch your femoral after I train at all. I usually eat more food. Oh, I mean, I'm not recovered for 24 hours to put out the workload I did the day before on that particular muscle group. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you shouldn't expect to be able to replicate performance in 24 hours. I mean, again, even for me as a pretty advanced lifter, I don't try to hit the same lifts again for 3 to 4 days. My trainers give me crap. Yeah, Megan, that's its own topic. There's a lot of research on that at this point. Stretching for certain purposes is overrated. It has its uses, but it's usually not the things that people think that it is. I don't do a lot of that stuff. For me, it's hot baths, more carbs, carbohydrates, hot baths, Epsom salt in a hot bath. I would much rather do that. Right? Again, we're getting blood flow to some overreaching usually. Tendon pain, more irritability. You're more irritable, sometimes more trouble sleeping. Disturbed sleep is definitely a big one for me personally. Right? All right. Oh, we were in this one about 17 minutes. So I got some stars in here. Megan, I think it was you that sent me stars. I appreciate that. They're always appreciated. What's Michael doing? Monday squat core day.